Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's no one, and welcome back to another video. Here we are back at it with another classic story of mine. This one being the first time I tried MDMA, specifically Ecstasy. Recently I do feel like we've been kind of making jumps in the stories, like you just heard about me doing kratom, then cocaine, and not too long ago it was Benadryl. But that really is just how sort of things unfolded. When I entered the world of psychonautics, substances seemed to rather just come up in my lap, one right after another. And the thing was, I was pretty much ready and engaged most of the time. And this video marks yet another episode of Chapter 1, Beginnings of a Psychonaut, which, at this point, with this episode, we're a bit over halfway done with Chapter 1. And just knowing how things will play out, it won't take too long for us to finish this playlist, and then we'll move into Chapter 2. But if you are a familiar on this channel, you know what I've been up to pretty much. Right away you should know it was me and the homie Evan, looking for a good night out, which of course always included some drug use. And by the way we were going, who knows which direction things would take us. And on this day and night, I expected pretty much none of what happened to happen. But let me just set up some base things before we get this story rolling. So if you don't know who Evan is at this point, he was basically my drug partner for a good portion of time. What I mean by that is that me and Evan were stoners who curiously set out to try a variety of substances for psychonautic purposes. Evan and I had been bros for years throughout high school, and Chapter 1 marks our little venture in the varying realms of consciousness. Now on this day, we hadn't even planned to do anything crazy or new really. It was our friends who brought on what this night came to be really. And those friends are some familiars in our stories. The three main people we were with this night includes Isabel, Race, and Sydney. Isabel was a good friend of ours we hung out with daily almost. Same thing with Grace, as she was also Evan's little sister. And Sydney was a friend we would see here and there. She was with us before in the Benadryl story. But these will be important people, and we'll place things together better as we go along. But let's start the story chronologically now. You got the important backstory of where we were at the time, and you can watch previous stories to build off of that if you want to get more context on everything. But on this day, I remember it was the beginning of September, and it barely had been a week since I tried cocaine. And I think it was only a few days since I did kratom for the first time. At this point, we weren't even looking to do anything else new at the time. Maybe some acid, but that would be right around the corner. Instead, on this day, we were more so looking to get stoned as fuck and possibly fucked up off something later in the night. On this day, I remember waking up kinda late, like around noon or 1, to Evan's phone call. I quickly remembered that earlier in the week, he said on this day we should go in and get an ounce of bud. I didn't expect to hear from him until later that day, but apparently, he already went and picked up and was trying to get our day going early. The strain he ended up getting was Purple Kush. Something I hadn't tried at the time, so we were pretty excited just about that. He also told me he wanted to do some kratom too, so it can just kinda hold us over until the night came, where we would go harder. But anyways, I get dressed or whatever, and Evan shortly comes to scoop me. We go to our favorite smoking spot, which it was literally just this kind of low-key park. We would just pull up and box the fuck out of his Mustang. But we went there, rolled up, and I didn't know it, but we would smoke most of this ounce on this day. This first joint will be one of many, but it would be mainly blunt smoked. Initially, I remember the smoke being really good. It provided us with a really solid body high. We then poured up our kratom, which I remember we did stop at Jewel beforehand, grab some snacks, and orange juice. Which at this time, orange juice was the best mix we knew about for kratom. And I'll tell you now, I think there's way better stuff to mix it with, and that mix is just straight up gross. But we want to get higher, so we don't really even think about it and drink it. Well, Evan tries to, but I think halfway through, the taste catches up with him. Anyways, we consumed what we planned to consume, and we were feeling right. We had the Juicy J blasted, of course, and we proceeded to smoke another joint and a blunt, I believe. But amidst all this, we were also discussing our plans for the night. There wasn't necessarily anything lined up in terms of parties, but that didn't mean the night was shot. So, we started talking about what we would do later that night in terms of drugs. If worse came to worse, it was alcohol. Evan then brought up possibly getting barred out, something he's done many of times prior to this point, but it would be a first time for me. But in all honesty, I had an idea of what Xanax would be like, and to me it sounded like as if it would dampen the night rather than enhance it. So instead, I brought up taking Ecstasy or Molly, and I thought Evan would be totally down for it, but he instead gave me a face of uncertainty. He told me he'd done it at this point before a few times already, and started describing what the experience is like. He told me that Isabel liked it. Specifically, he told me about Isabel's addiction with them. Isabel pretty much did X like every weekend at one point, and if you know your MDMA, then you know that's not a good remedy for the serotonin system. To say the least, she ended up seriously depressed for a certain period of time, and she even thinks there may have been some damage from it. But I'll just say now that this night will be the night Isabel somewhat returns to MDMA. We'll get into the specifics later. But Evan went on, broke down the pros and cons of it, but still, he knew himself that I would need to experience it to truly understand the value of it. But this day he told me that he didn't necessarily feel in the mood to take an upper like that if we can find some, then I should try it, but Evan specifically wanted to do some Xanax this night. Either way, we spent that afternoon getting blazed and crossed with the Kratom. We did our normal shit, chilled, went for a walk, a drive, saw a few people, just flowing with the day. It wasn't until around 5 or 6 that Isabel hit us up to pick her up from work. So we scoop her, head back to the park to meet up with some of our friends. Grace and Sydney were with a couple of our other friends at the time. Their names don't really matter as they don't stay for long. But at the park, we were talking about what to do this night. Our other friends wanted to drink and do cocaine, which none of us were really looking to do this night, especially considering the price. But we split from the park as it was starting to get dark out, and we went back to Isabel's crib for the meantime, with Sydney and Grace coming along with us. Now I think Evan brought it up that I wanted to try X. Sydney jumped on that idea, and so did Grace. It would be Grace's first time too. Isabel kind of rejected it, bringing up her past experience, but honestly the pull and desire from the rest of the group I think influenced her to want to try it again, which after this point she would slowly start doing it again, like once or twice a month, and Grace being her best friend and having her wanting to try it and then ending up liking it influenced Isabel even more. And if you know with best friends, it can be a very special experience to introduce them to a new substance, especially MDMA. But Isabel was iffy, but decided to lead the way for us in finding some. She had the most connects, and it did take some time to find some, but eventually she was able to find this guy that liked her on Facebook or something, and he gave them to her for a good deal. Also keep in mind at this point, the weed just kind of flows, and flows for most of the night. There really wasn't much breathing room for when we weren't smoking. And I mean, the girls did bring some, but it was mainly the purple kush we smoked on this night. But we get things set up with the plug and make our way there. We stopped to see Evan's plug first for Xanax. I believe Evan popped like 2 milligrams worth this night. After that, we drive to the other part of town, kind of far away, and it's a part that's considered generally one of the worst parts. But it is what it is, you gotta do what you gotta do. So we pull up to this random ass street in the projects, and Grace and Isabel leave to go grab the X pills. And we're chilling for a fat minute before they come back, like at least 15 or 20 minutes. I think it was because Isabel's dealer kept on flirting with her or something, but either way they come back with 4 X pills. They were all Superman pills if you're curious, and I ended up getting a purple one. I was excited and anxious as I had no idea what kind of experience lied in this pill, but we all kind of had a toast and we dove in and downed our pills. Now I should have been a lot more cautious this night. For one, I didn't really know what these pills were exactly. Based off the experience that follows, I do assume it was ecstasy, but I wasn't 100% sure, especially beforehand. For all we could have known, the pills could have been infused with meth, not something you want to do for your first time. And second, we had this dude Evan driving the whole time off 2 milligrams or whatever of Xanax. You know, the type of shit that's known to cause blackouts and motor loss control. It wasn't the smartest way to go about things, but it is what it is. We did what we did at the time, and we didn't really give a fuck too much. We were just looking for a good time for the most part. But I personally was doing research on MDMA some more, something I'll normally do as I'm coming into a substance. And I was mainly looking forward to the feelings of increased empathy. And I'm not going to say exactly what it is in this video, but I do have a social disorder I was born with, and I was really excited to see if MDMA would alleviate some of the symptoms I have from that. So not only was this night a discovery of a new high for me, it was also like the discovery of medicine and therapy for me later on. But anyways, the come-up period was somewhat anxious for me, mainly due to excitement. We drove around a bit before heading back, and someone suggested we roll up another blunt. Now by the time this was rolled, it had been at least a half hour already since we took it. And once I started smoking is when I started to notice a difference, and that I wasn't just getting a weed high. This was like right when we were coming back too. I started to tell them about it as things just came out a lot easier. And Isabel was beginning to question how good these pills actually were, and whether if I was just placeboing it, because she didn't feel anything yet. But Grace said that she was feeling some of the things I was. Some key initial effects I experienced was happiness. I remember straight up just wanting to smile, then just decreased appreciation for those around me. I remember like someone had a strong glow to them. Then I remember just losing care for my surroundings. There were definitely feelings of disinhibition. But the biggest thing for me though was just this realization and beauty that was introduced to me as this drug came on. And this is a big reason that this is still one of my top substances, probably in the top 3, if not number 1 in some cases throughout my life so far. And coming on, I remember not saying a whole lot because I was just trying to take that in. Like, you have to realize that X didn't just provide me with feelings of euphoric freedom. It helped lift feelings I've been dealing with all my life with just a small switch. It's like I had found an answer, like I finally found a doorway that's going to help me bridge countless relationships in the way I mean them to. And that might sound somewhat scary to some, and having those thoughts did in a way for me too. The feelings MDMA can provide me can be seen as very appealing for someone in my position, possibly having addiction come very easy. But I think with the information and approach I took, and also just knowing what Isabel had been through, that made it much less likely to happen, and thankfully, it never has in my case with MDMA. But we get back to Isabel's crib shortly as it began to come on. I remember we smoked on her front porch, and then someone suggested we walk to the gas station close by. So we smoked and walked there, and I got more of a word with Evan. I just told him how the X was making me feel, and how it was therapeutic for me. Though Evan was really zanned out at this point, and wouldn't really remember it, just being able to tell him some of the stuff I did felt amazing. It was like I could say anything with no concern. But this is also when Isabel started to feel it. Now instead of feeling rolly and happy like the rest of us, she started to feel really sick and nauseous. She had done it so much before that her body was now rejecting it. So, as we walked, she had to stop and puke on the side. She puked like twice, but afterwards, she felt fine. She claimed she didn't feel like she was rolling though. Anyways, we get to the gas station, and I just get a big water. During our walk, Isabel brought up how she wanted to turn up somewhere still, and if she can get another roll, she would want to do it. And at the time, I was pretty much down to do anything and hang anywhere. Probably not take another roll, but still. Alright, so we're going to end it there for part 1 today. This story did turn out a lot longer than I expected it to be, so we'll finish it up another time. But if you guys did like this video, want to see more stories, want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below and like the video. If you aren't subscribed, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, follow the socials, share the video. It's been someone that's no one, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.